Hello, welcome back to the podcast. I cannot believe we are on season 6 already. Thank you so much to everyone who's been listening and commenting and sharing our content online. Don't forget, if you love what you hear, to like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast listening app of choice. We're really excited about this upcoming season. We've already interviewed some really inspiring and incredible guests who have planned a wedding that may be a little bit outside of the norm, or who had to struggle with a lack of representation or inspiration because they didn't fit the stereotypical depiction of a married couple. So we're taking a real closer look at inclusion and diversity, something that's really close to Heidi and myself for various reasons. So in this episode, we're just giving you a little intro and outline of what to expect in season 6 and why this topic is really important to us. As ever, Heidi started the episode in her usual charming and delightful manner.
Shut up, Ross. Should we start it like that? I think we should start it like that. Ross, shut up.
And we've started season 6. I like it. How you doing, Heidi? Have you had a good summer?
We're not doing very well here.
Okay. We're doing amazing. Have you had a good summer?
I've had a great summer. I've had a really busy summer. You'll be the same. Wedding season has been the craziest, maddest, busy wedding season I have ever experienced.
I know.
Lots of late nights.
Definitely. I've been here, there, and everywhere doing weddings, different counties, different countries within the UK. Lots of weddings, lots of driving, lots of editing. But it's so nice to be back doing what we love doing, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. It's amazing. And when the photos, I mean, obviously you're there on the day, I'm not, but when the photos for me start coming through of my couples, just the flipping joy. I mean, you can see how much
so much joy, definitely. I think that's the one thing that everyone agrees on at the moment, is how much joy is coming out in these photos. And the relief as well. I think I had a bride say to me, "Oh, it's been an amazing day. For one day I forgot COVID existed," which I think is lovely. Not that they weren't sensible or anything like that, but it was, it wasn't doom and gloom and worrying. It was just enjoying the moment, which I don't think we've been able to do for a long time. So it's been a wonderful summer. Our 2-week hiatus between episodes turned into 3 months, but I think that was inevitable, really. But we're on to season 6, and we're not taking a different look. We're just sort of honing in a bit more on what's important to us, which is inclusivity, diversity, and just amplifying voices that aren't heard loud enough or often enough across the wedding industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I have had many a conversation behind the scenes about why inclusivity is important to us, and
absolutely
representation of minority groups. And we'll discuss our different reasons, but in mainstream media, there is a sort of a classic one-size-fits-all representation of your wedding day. We know it's getting better. We know that there's better representation of couples that don't fall into those one-size-fits-all categories, but there's still not enough of it for my liking. It's still slightly tokenistic on a lot of platforms.
Absolutely. I mean, even this weekend I had a shoot with a couple, and they said, "Oh, we really liked your work because you photograph real people," which I thought was, quite a succinct way of putting it, really. I think there's still this sort of aesthetic that's very young and white and skinny and straight. And weddings are for everyone. Weddings take place for everyone. So this series, we're talking to real life couples and real life brides and grooms who are for want of a better phrase, from a minority group, I would say, or whose experience of wedding planning was influenced by their gender or their sexuality or their religion or their age, and just listening to their experience so we can share their experience with all our listeners, whether they're wedding professionals or couples getting married, and learn from them and listen to them. I think that's the key to this series. We really sat back and listened, because we do jabber on quite a bit. Because we have so much wisdom.
Jabbering.
We're full of wisdom. It's very knowledgeable jabber. But to actually listen to the people that were getting married and what they experienced, I think it's really powerful. I think we've got some really powerful episodes coming up.
And I also think it's incredibly important. I mean, the whole visibility thing. Again, you and I were just talking before we started the record about face masks and how visible face masks change sort of the way somebody might treat you. So if you don't wear a face mask, people sort of think that you're more relaxed about sort of getting up close and personal. If you've got a face mask on, it's very much a sort of visible sign that, I'm still concerned. I would still like to keep my distance. I'm still being cautious. So it's a visible sign. And I think visibility in society is incredibly important. You normalize difference if it's visible. If you've got lots of kids in a school from multi-faiths and abilities and gender, and then kids grow up knowing that disability is nothing to be scared of. Somebody of a different faith is nothing to be scared of. Somebody with a different sexuality is nothing to be scared of. And I think, for me, visibility is key, and it is so very important. If we see people who are, what we call different, I hate it, what we call different, on our TV screens, in our magazines, on podcasts, then you are just normalizing what is actually normal. It is society. Difference is normal, isn't it? Diversity is normal. And so that's what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to not provide role models, but provide representation this series, so that people, I've always said, even when I started the podcast a couple of years ago, I had all sorts of guests on, and I say you can talk about whatever you like as long as it applies to every couple getting married. So there was always that underlying ethos of inclusion, but we're just sort of ramping it up and just sort of looking at different aspects and different couples and individuals, more specifically, and sort of shining the spotlight on those different groups of people who, for whatever reason, didn't get maybe the best or the fairest experience of wedding planning. And that's why, one of the reasons why I find it important is that there's still a large disparity in the experiences of people getting married. So yes, same-sex marriage is legal, and it has been for about 10 years. That doesn't mean LGBTQ couples getting married have the same positive experiences as everyone else. So it's just delving into those experiences and trying to create a wedding planning journey for everyone that is full of excitement, rather than disillusionment and frustration. We know weddings are about celebration, they're about union, they're about bringing families together, they're bringing couples together. So these are celebratory events and joyous, and at the moment especially so. And so anything that kind of taints that and reminds people that there is still prejudice out there is not very nice, and it does have an impact on the overall experience. Now, the day might still be absolutely amazing, but just having had that, I had a bride recently who we were chatting about a wedding dress, and talking about a bride's wedding dress is normally a really exciting thing, because they've fallen in love with this dress, they know they look amazing in it, they can't wait to wear it. And I spoke to a bride, and she said to me, "This is my dress. I'll be honest, I don't really love it. I would have chosen something else, but I'm a bigger bride, so what can I expect?
Oh.
And I said, you can expect the same choice as everybody else is what you can expect. And it really upset me that it's still happening. And you know, we're all different shapes and sizes, and a lot of these dresses are you know, they are made to be altered. You know, they can be altered. So I can't get my head around why somebody who's a size 20 can't wear the dress of their dreams. It really upsets me.
I know, absolutely. And it shouldn't be that way. And it should be, you know, they should be able to walk into a shop and see dresses in their size that are as beautiful and as intricate, you know, and as joyous to try on as everybody else. But it's obvious that that's not quite what's happening, really. And I think what you said is
some boutiques, I have to say, have got it down. You know, they're all over the plus size ranges. And you know, and it's good to see. I think it's taken a long time, but it is good to see. And you know, I can't honestly, hand on heart, tar all suppliers with the same brush and say,
you can't. But you also have to wonder what experience led your bride to feel that she had to make do. Was that a lifelong experience that she just sort of obviously naturally transferred to when she was trying on wedding dresses? Was it people who supply the wedding dresses or in the wedding dress shop that kind of inadvertently put out that idea that she would just have to kind of make do? And it's those little things that make all the difference. And that's what we're talking about, isn't it? It's not, you know, I'm not saying that people get called names or people, you know, they refuse to work with certain couples. It's the finer details like language and tone of voice and asking the right questions or not asking questions if certain things are none of your business.
In most cases, in most cases. Having said that, again, you know, I fairly recently had a conversation with a transgender bride where she was pretty much kicked out of a shop and told there's nothing for you here, and that she was devastated, absolutely devastated. So that kind of out and out prejudice is still out there. We know it is. We see it hitting the headlines. We know.
We do. And although we know it's out there, we're probably in a nice little bubble because of, you know, you've got a daughter with Down syndrome and I'm gay, so we've both had those personal experiences, but we've also surrounded ourselves with friends and family and other suppliers who share our ethos. So you do get into a nice little safety bubble sometimes. So talking to these couples has really sort of opened my eyes to sort of remind me almost that, you know, things still aren't okay and that there's still work for us to do, even if we see ourselves as jolly, lovely, nice, inclusive people. There's always stuff we can learn and do. But there's, you know, I think we've learned a lot from listening to these people. We don't come in saying, oh, we're experts. We're not experts. We don't never claim to be experts on anything. We're learning at the same time as our listeners, which I think is what's been so exciting.
Yeah, definitely. So why is it important to you? You know, we've touched on it here, Ross, that we are focused on inclusivity and making sure that the less traditional wedding couple have know that there are other people like them. But why is it important to you?
For me specifically, obviously, I've not got married, but I've experienced awkward moments, for want of a better phrase, as a supplier. Tricky moments where I photographed a couple. They were an older couple, not that makes any difference or should make any difference. And so they'd already booked me. Their wedding was 2 weeks away. We started having a conversation about their venue, and the venue was owned by a lesbian couple. And they were like, oh, you know, X and Y couple. And I was like, oh, yeah, I think so. And they were like, oh, well, I suppose it's the norm now. I suppose nobody cares about that kind of thing anymore. And of course, I was sat there thinking, what do I say? Do I suddenly out myself and it'd be really awkward? Should I have said something sooner? What do they mean by it's the norm? You're obviously making out that it should. Are you making out that it shouldn't be? Or it was really awkward with 2 weeks to their wedding, and it just highlighted the need as well for me as a supplier to be quite open from the outset. And I don't want to or shouldn't have to, say, hello, I'm Ross, I'm a photographer, I'm gay. Shouldn't have to. But I also feel like on social media or at quite soon in the conversation with couples, they know that part about me. And that's something that other people don't have to worry about at all. Even my book, I send a copy of my book out to couples, and it talks about me coming out and finding it difficult, and that's where my sort of passion for inclusion comes from. Sometimes, I think, and this is my, I don't know whether it's based on my experience or my prejudice or stereotyping, which is wrong with me, but I think, I'm not sure that groom's going to read it and will still want to sort of work. Do you know what I mean? You sort of, I think, are they going to be okay with it? I know the bride will be fine, but what if he reads it? Or I'm not sure they'll be okay. And sometimes, as lovely as my couples are, I think, should I send that book? Because it does say quite a lot about me. And it depends what mood I'm in as well. But I think sometimes I don't feel comfortable putting that much of myself into it. Do you know what I mean? And so that sort of reminds me that not everyone has that. That sort of barrier.
I resent it a little bit. I often have to explain. So when I start talking about my daughter, I'm her main carer. She needs a considerable amount of support. Well, not considerable amount of support. She doesn't actually. That's not true. But she needs more support than most 18-year-old young women would need from their mum. And so I'll start talking about, how I've got to pick my daughter up, and people will always assume that because I have to be so hands-on with, picking her up from college and what have you, that she's little. And you get that, how old is she? And I'll go, 18. And then you get the look of, what? Why are you? She's 18. And then I have to explain that she has Down syndrome. And I always resent it a little bit. I have to... I do. I have to sort of reveal my family just to explain, why perhaps I can't stay as long as other suppliers, or I've got to take this call because it might be somebody from college telling me that there's an issue. I almost resent it, Ross. I don't know about you. Why do I have to?
I feel like that sometimes, and somebody quite rightly pointed out that you don't just come out once, you come out for the rest of your life, because you go to a networking meeting, or, I was saying to you before, I'm doing a wedding show this weekend, and not that it's an issue, but I've got like a pride flag on display, one, because a couple booked me last time, so like we were just looking for pride flags once we'd seen them, so I wanted that visible, but also, I've put on it, I'm a pride member and supporter of this community, just because right from the front then, and there's no issues, and like, again, we don't get to a point at the wedding where, but then I've done weddings, where the groom's been fine, but there's that casual homophobic comments, oh my, come on Dave, you're bendy, you're still in getting ready or something,
I honestly,
and I sort of chuckle away, and I just think, I'm a bender, but you're paying me $2,000, so I'll shut up. But I shouldn't have to. But I can't on the wedding day say, hold up, that's unacceptable, I'm going to stop, because it's somebody's wedding day, and it's not necessarily the groom or the bride, but a guest, and it's just like, no, other people don't have to. And then suppliers will say to me, do you really need to specialise in gay weddings? It's all right now. And I think it's not all right, because I know it's not all right. And actually speaking to one of our guests, Lisa, who was getting married as a lesbian woman, but also trains businesses and wedding industry people about inclusivity and LGBTQ equality. I find it quite nice to speak to her, She was like, no, it's not. It's still not the same experience, and there are still issues, and there are still barriers. Because I sometimes get to a point where other people keep telling me it's not a problem. So you kind of think, is it just me? Am I hanging on to old hang-ups? Because things are probably a lot better now for people growing up than when I was growing up. But you kind of sort of second guess yourself, think, oh, am I dwelling on the negatives, not the positives? And I think, no, actually, when I do speak to other people, who are gay or transgender, or queer, they've had the same experiences still. Yeah. So it's only well-meaning straight people that tell me that I don't really need to specialize on niche down.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. It is interesting. So that's why it's really important, not to say, look how awful these people have it, but just to say, don't take it for granted. Yes, we might see more of it, but we don't see enough of it. It's still not normalized. All these people with disabilities or plus sized or getting married later in life, there's
oh, absolutely. It's so rare. It is so rare. I noticed the other day that Love My Dress, the wedding blog, had featured on their social media an older couple who were renewing.
Yes, I saw that.
And it jumps out a mile because you don't see it. As soon as you see a bride in a wheelchair, a more mature couple, a mixed faith wedding, it jumps out a mile because you don't see it. And yet we know those weddings are happening all the time.
All the time. Yeah. And I think there's a thing as well in photography, this whole business of high-end or fine art photography, that it's exclusively for a certain type of couple. I very rarely see someone who's, as a lot of people call themselves fine art and they're not, in my opinion. But you rarely see diversity in those sort of what people class as sort of higher end. Do you know what I mean? High fashion looks.
Yeah.
And I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. Why can't you be this high end, fabulously arty photographer and photograph a bride who's, 50 or 60, or in a wheelchair, but you don't really see that. And I wonder as well if part of that comes back to your bride who says, well, I'm a plus size bride, I have to take what I can get. Yeah. Whether there's within those groups, they feel like, well, what's the point in spending lots on a really good photographer? We don't see ourselves in their portfolio, or we're only going to look so good anyway, so let's not. Do you know what I mean? Whether that it has those subliminal messages.
We go back to visibility. And as soon as you start seeing catwalk models that have got disabilities, you start seeing people represented in magazines, in TV shows, all of a sudden you're seeing more and more people with cerebral palsy on TV. And that's because, Breaking Bad cast a guy with cerebral palsy as one of the main characters. It wasn't like his thing, the fact that he had cerebral palsy wasn't his thing. He was just a teenage lad.
Yeah, totally.
And then Rosie, what's
Rosie Jones? I love
Rosie Jones.
She cracks me up.
Because people don't have first-hand experience necessarily of people with disabilities, there's always sort of a myth built around them, like, does he take milk in that? And, I still get it all the time when I'm out and about with my daughter. People will say, does she like to me? She's nearly 19. So I'll say, well, do you want to ask her? And it's that sort of, the scales falling from people's eyes. People realise that people with disabilities have thoughts, feelings, intelligence, ability. Yes, they have a disability, and that particular disability will be a barrier to a thing. And that might be speech, mobility, hearing, whatever it might be. But it's just that one thing. It's that one element. The rest of them is all working fine, thanks.
Yeah.
So it's going back to visibility. People, seeing firsthand how somebody with a disability functions. So it goes back to visibility, which is why for me and for you, this series is so important. We're talking to real couples, real experiences, positive and negative, but really sort of focusing in on weddings that do not get put in the spotlight. So,
Yeah,
you're not
totally.
seeing these people, even though every weekend they're bloody well getting married. So
Yeah,
why aren't we seeing
yeah,
them?
totally. And I think as well, what is important is these are people that have got married, so they can tell you about the whole journey. They've got the benefit of hindsight, which I think is really powerful as well. Looking back 1, 2, 3 years down the line, how were they treated in a wedding dress shop? Does that still impact their memories of the wedding today? Or are there things they worried about that actually they didn't need to, just in general? Would they spend less on favors or something 5 years down the line? I think nobody really remembers that bit. So I think that's really powerful. And as much as I love talking to other wedding suppliers, and I've talked to a lot, and they're full of wisdom, I think you can't replicate the wisdom of couples who have been there and done it, really.
Absolutely, yeah, first-hand experience. And yeah, those experiences are both positive and negative, as we know now, having spoken to our couples. So yeah, we're not just focusing on the negative. This is, still wedding planning, and it's still an amazing thing to be doing. And, you're essentially planning out a big party. It's important that the people that you rely on to help you plan that big party know that, there are stereotypes that should be avoided in order to make your couples enjoy the experience.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think is important is giving people a voice and empowering them to speak up. Because I think if they speak up whilst they're planning, if they're not being treated right, or they're not getting the service they expect. I mean, we heard from a couple of couples that were quite, I don't want to say outspoken, because outspoken always has negative connotations. They were quite honest with their suppliers when their language wasn't inclusive, or the service wasn't good enough. And I think that's really important. And I think it's, hopefully, into these episodes, listeners will feel empowered to speak up for themselves. And for other couples, I think everyone needs to have sometimes a difficult conversation and say, look, you said this, it's not right. This isn't the term you should be using, or this is, you're not being inclusive with your language or your treatment, or the way your service is outlined or described or carried out just doesn't fit with us. And if you speak up for yourself, you're also speaking up for other people, and that can be really powerful as well. So
yeah,
I'm hoping that this series will really empower all couples to really stand strong in the wedding that they want, and not feel pressured to conform or make do or adapt their wedding plans just because of one part of who they are. And it's about celebrating people as people, isn't it? And seeing people first, and their gender or disability or age second, or not at all. Yeah, excellent. So
absolutely,
that's what's coming up. Yes, so they're going to be fortnightly as ever. They're going to be going out on Wednesdays, so middle of the week. Still be on all the usual platforms, so Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast listening pleasure, you can carry on. But do subscribe if you're new. I know we had lots of listeners to our best bits from the end of last series. We're still getting lots of downloads for that episode. So if you only just joined us, have a listen to our best bits. There's lots of new best bits to look forward to. Anything to add, Heidi, before we say goodbye for now?
I just can't wait to get it out there, Ross. I'm really proud of the interviews that we've done so far, and yeah, it's obviously means a lot to us, and I can't wait for. I think people are going to get an awful lot out of it, so I'm really looking forward to this series.
Brilliantly. Oh, and we'll also be in the comments and the show notes for this episode. There'll be links to some really useful resources, and throughout the series, we'll be posting on our social media relevant information and resources specific to that particular topic of the fortnight. So stay tuned, lock in, subscribe, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.